So we're going to look at what the switches do and how they can help you make your project easier to deal with. So you can either grab the parallax example file, which we'll actually be doing a full lesson on in the later module, or if you just have any layered Illustrator file, that can work too. You just want to make sure you have multiple layers, and it is a vector file. So we're going to bring this in as composition retain layer sizes. That'll give us our layers separately in After Effects, and also make sure that all the artwork will be included even if it's off the stage. Go ahead and click Open, and then we'll double tap to go inside. So this is going to get used in a later lesson, but we can utilize the fact that it has multiple layers in the vector files to show off the purpose of some of these switches. So let's start out on the left over here. And your layout may be a little bit different than mine. It can get rearranged, but look for your ability to hide your layers and lock your layers, because there's a little circle icon right here that is called solo, and what it'll do is kind of the opposite of your hide layers. So let's say that we only want to see our cars, but we want to hide everything else in the background. What we can do is we can turn the solo switch on for our cars, then everything else hides. You can do this on multiple layers. You can do front buildings also, and maybe just the back to see the tint in the back. If you want to get everything back to normal, you just turn all the switches off. So it's a solo switch. It's not a very complicated switch, but it's very useful if you have a lot of layers in here and you have to see just a few of them at a time. Another layer that has a effect on larger projects is the shy switch. And what that'll do is that'll collapse your layers within your layer panel here if you don't need to see them. Once again, it's something that's very useful if you have a lot of layers in your project, but with this, it's not as useful. We can still see how it works. So go ahead and choose a few layers to shy, and they're going to be ones that disappear in your layer panel. So street and sidewalk, and do back building, and cars. So pick about half of them to shy. And then to actually have the shy work, you need to turn on your main shy switch up here. So the artwork will still stay visible in your composition panel, but the layers themselves hide in your layer panel. To get everything back, you just turn off your master shy switch, and then if you want to, you can also disable your shy switches on your individual layers. Once again, not a very complicated switch, but something that's very useful. This next one we've actually looked at in the past, but I just want to review it again since we are looking at other switches, and that's the continuous rasterization switch. So I'm going to select my car layer, and then press S to get my scale property. And when I scale this up, even though it is a vector, and go pretty large on it, you can see that the quality of it is dropping. It's getting very pixelated. To fix this, what you would do is turn on this continuous rasterization switch, which I think is supposed to be a gear, but looks sort of like the sun or a star to me. So as soon as you turn that on for a vector layer after you scaled it up beyond 100%, it's going to come back to full quality. Taking it off lowers the quality. So this is just something you would want to do on any vector layers that you are planning on scaling up beyond 100%. If it's going to stay under 100%, then it's not an issue, and turning it on will actually slow down your processor more. And let's also take a look at what's called the motion blur switch. And the motion blur switch just makes your life a little bit easier by having you not have to calculate how much blur is going to be put on this to convey the proper motion by itself. So if you've ever looked at a video and seen really fast movement and gone frame by frame in it, usually what you'll see is like a blur of the movement. So instead of seeing like the image as a still image, you actually see it kind of trailing color behind it. So that's what motion blur is trying to simulate with this, and it just saves you from having to do it yourself, and it makes the quicker movements look less jittery. So let's go ahead and do a really quick fast movement on our cars. So I'm going to start it on the left side of the screen. I'm going to enable my position keyframe. I got my position property by pressing P. I'll move forward, let me try 20 frames, and slide it all the way across the screen. We got a little bit of vertical movement, which I didn't want, but that's okay. So let me trim my work area. Remember, N, the letter N as in no, will trim the end of your work area. You can also go a little bit longer. And that'll let you see what this is going to look like. Zoom in just a little bit more. We go to full 100%. And it's got a little bit of a flickery look to it. So instead of that, I'd rather have it kind of smooth out so that instead of seeing that each one of these is a different frame, it actually kind of blurs them together a little bit more, making it easier on the eye to see. So to do that, you're going to enable your motion blur switch, and you're not going to see anything happen at first. What you also need to do is turn on your main motion blur switch. And now you really start to see the blur. And the faster the movement, the more blur it'll apply. So I've got a pretty large amount of movement here, and in a very short amount of time. So we get a lot of blur. Let me go ahead and put an ease on this as well. And that way you'll see the blur is actually going to not start. And then as it builds up speed, it gets more blur, and then as it slows down, it gets less blur again. You can also try moving your keyframes further apart and closer together to see more or less blur. And go for about 2.5 seconds. And we get significantly less blur. By pushing closer together though, maybe 10 frames, we're going to get a lot of blur. So, and the advantage of having this main motion blur switch is, once again, this is kind of taxing on your processor. Turning this off will just make it easier while you're working through your project if you don't need to see that blur. And then if you need to preview the blur, you can turn it back on here without having to turn multiple switches on and off within your layers.